Hello.
Hello. There we go.
There we go. I'm so happy to see you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. It's storming here. Storming.
Is it? Wow, that is shocking. Oh my goodness.
It is heavy, heavy, heavy rain. So we're closing every window, making sure that you can't hear the storm. Woo.
That nothing. I can kind of hear it, but there's nothing we can do about Mother Nature.
Yeah, it's just Mother Nature's decision today.
Exactly, but it is.
How are you? And how's New York?
New York is it's a bit quiet than usual. It's a bit quiet than usual because normally when I go out in the streets, it's like buzzing and there's people everywhere. But now I can literally look out my window and see nobody there. Oh, look at my camera flipping its screen. There we go.
Yeah, I was gonna flip my screen, but then I wasn't sure if I knew what to do.
There you have me. Yeah, so when I look outside, there's not really much happening with what's going on. But I'm aware that the lockdown has been extended and the Minister of Health was on yesterday just briefing the nation.
Yes.
How was that? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was really good because they filled us with confidence that they know what's going on.
Yeah.
And really walked us through why they're making the decisions they're making. And it was really heartening to see that South Africa really seems to be leading the way in its response. I think they made the decision really quick and on time. And so I think that we are in a good place considering. South Africa is a country that is connected. People travel a lot from here. So it's inevitable that there would be some connections this way. Comparing us to other countries, I think we're doing really well and we're starting to sort of level out. But I think what's scary is the fact that the Prof was saying that we do expect that there will be at some point in another couple of months, we expect a peak. Ooh, that's a big lightning strike.
Yes, I did watch that. He did say in as much as we are kind of in the safe-ish zone now, we shouldn't think we've escaped this as a country. It's coming. But like you said, the honesty of it all, I think the transparency and letting people know the truth was amazing. But
it really was,
let's get into this, Mom Anne. Let me introduce you to people in case they don't know you, because you are absolutely brilliant, and it's such an honor for me to be actually speaking today. You're welcome. So, Anne Githuku-Shongwe is a representative of UN Women's South Africa multi-country office, which is responsible for women's empowerment and gender equality in Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, Namibia, as well as South Africa. A key responsibility of her work is to develop women-owned businesses, which I think is incredible, and both in the private and public sector. She's also a founder of Afro's Games, a tech education social enterprise with multiple award-winning games. It's such a mouthful. It is such a mouthful, which is why I'm saying it's an honor for me to be talking to you today because of your expertise and your intellect and just, what you do for South Africa and the world as a whole. You seem to have such a passion for women. Have you always had a passion for women and their struggles, their issues, and tell us about that. When did you start showing an interest in women?
Well, I grew up with a very strong mother, very, very strong. And I think there is research that shows you grow up with a strong mother, chances are you're going to grow up pretty strong on those issues. And my mother was an entrepreneur or is an entrepreneur. She also taught and, she's a political person. I mean, my grandfather was a politician. And so my mother and all her many, many brothers and sisters were very engaged with this. And together we were always having these huge debates with my uncles who were big politicians about women's position and always disagreeing with them because it was highly patriarchal in my family. And so we're constantly having to challenge this. But I think it's also just the realization that, I didn't have any barriers to be able to be and do whatever it is that I wanted to do. I went to school like my brothers did, and, you know, we were given equal opportunity. So for me to see women struggling, and I think my first experience of sort of discrimination against women was in high school when my brothers would come home and talk to me about, you know, we were all in boarding school, and they would tell me about their math teachers and their chemistry teachers and biology teachers. And I actually realized, I did a bit of research, and I realized that girls' high schools were given less powerful or less strong chemistry and science and math teachers. And so in some ways, we were directed away from math and science just by virtue of who taught us. And that was a big issue for me. And I was constantly fighting with the teachers, trying to make sure that we got equal share, and trying to work with my brothers and you know, to make sure that I understood. And I was pretty strong in math, and it was really such a bother to me that we didn't have really good teachers. But then went on to university, and I found that I was the president of the Black Student Union at a university in the US. And I found that there was discrimination against me as a leader, and those who used to distribute the resources for the leaders, for the different organizations on campus, would say to me that, you know, you're not tried and tested, you know, you're a new leader, and therefore we can't share the resources equally to some of the other companies, other organizations. And yet the man who was the leader before me had a huge budget, but they wouldn't give me the budget. And I had to stage a huge dramatic fight to be able to make sure that I had equal share, you know? So I realized at that point, this isn't gonna happen. It's not gonna just happen. No matter where I am, I have to keep raising my flag and saying, you know, this is what I expect. This is what has to happen. And as I said, I didn't grow up with discrimination in my household. And so I knew it was my full right. And so I would have to take it on wherever I went. And somehow I just fell into it. And so in university, I studied it. I studied feminism and women's development, and tried to understand how money and economy was organized in such a way that women were always at the bottom. And I knew this is going to have to be a lifelong battle that we just take on no matter where we go.
Yeah, and so you found yourself at UN Women, finally. What exactly is UN Women for some people who don't know, and what is its role in society and in the world today?
So the UN Women is actually a United Nations agency. A lot of people know UNICEF, and they know UNDP, or they know WHO. Right now, everybody's hearing about WHO. Some people call it WHO. WHO, yes. Just some people call UN Women UNWomen, but it is UN Women. It's the United Nations entity for gender equality and women's empowerment. And we are a United Nations body that is equal to any of the other United Nations body. Previously, we were a small program, but we now are an equal agency with an executive director, Dr. Tunzi Mlambo-Ngcuka, who is equal to the head of World Health Organization, and equal to the head of UNICEF, and equal to the head of the International Labour Organization. So they are like the global cabinet of the world. And then we have countries, country offices, and in that country offices, they would appoint a person like me to head that office, to run that office. And what we do in that country is support the government and private sector and civil society partners, the country in general, to push for gender equality everywhere. And we want to see gender equality and make sure that we have gender equality in schools. Fortunately, that's an area where in countries like South Africa and in Africa in general, we're seeing near equality in education now, at least in terms of actual access. Previously, it wasn't the case. Girls wouldn't go to school. We want to see equality in terms of political leadership. And today we have countries like South Africa, like Ethiopia, like Rwanda, who have over 50% or at least 50% women in cabinet and in parliament. And so it's really to say that women's voice is equal to men, and women should have equal access to that. So we look at areas of protection of women and ensuring that areas where women are particularly vulnerable, like in the case of violence against women and femicide, which is a growing trend across the world, that we are making sure that we're supporting that country to do everything it can to ensure that every woman can live a life equal to that of a man or anybody else in society. And when we talk about gender equality, we talk about men and women in all their diversity. So we look at the LGBTQI community and make sure that all those people who are living with disabilities, making sure that anybody who has any vulnerability that is gendered is part of our responsibility. And we make sure that we're creating a platform, an equal platform for everyone. And that's our responsibility. We have global meetings. We have the Commission on the Status of Women, which is held every year in New York. In March this year, it was canceled, which was painful for all of us. About 10,000 women come together, and men and governments, and come together and agree on standards. So that they'll agree, for instance, what are the standards to make sure that there's social protection for everybody, that there is, that everybody is given the kind of grants that they're provided for, health, or universal access to whatever is required. Then we go back to our countries and we ensure that that is implemented as per the way governments have agreed. So that's our job.
You spoke of Mampumzile Mlamboncuka, and she just came out on a tweet this other day, and I was watching her, and she was just saying during this COVID-19 time that there are a lot of women issues that aren't considered as essential and that they should be considered essential. What are the struggles that women have had to face during this time of COVID-19?
This has come really as a big surprise to every country as it starts. They start out and the focus is health. The focus is, let's figure out what to do about this corona. But in truth, in the world right now, in 1 year, 243 million women are subjected to intimate partner violence. And intimate partner violence means that it is your partner, your loved one in your household who is most likely to violate you, to abuse you, whether in the form of, of just beating or rape or even femicide in many instances. And so what we found is that lockdown, to many women, lockdown means that you're locked down with a person who violates you on a day-to-day basis, and you have nowhere to run. And so what we've seen, and I know France and Italy were already reporting 30 to 40% increase in the calls that are coming in. In South Africa, we have already begun to see that it's more than double the number of calls that come into the GBV command center for women who are saying that, we are locked down with our abusers and we don't know where to go. And so this is a big issue, and countries have to ramp up to make sure that they can respond to what was already a difficult epidemic, to what we are now calling at UN Women the shadow pandemic, which is violence against women and girls. So that's a big, big, big area that we're trying to figure out. We have to think about the fact that a woman who is abused and has to leave her home goes into a shelter, and she can't walk into that shelter because it's just, she needs to be sure, they need to be sure that she's not COVID positive. And so they have to, so we're having to create extra shelter space, find extra shelter space, so that women can be isolated, but in a way that is enabling them not to possibly infect others in the shelter. But I do have to say about this one, Zozi, it really is a shame that it is the women who are victims of violence themselves who have to leave the homes and look for a shelter. It is men who are actually abusing. And so what we really need to be doing is getting the men to leave the homes. And so we've been throwing out discussions and saying, and I think there's a couple of countries who started to think about that, to say that what we need to be doing is to create some kind of semi-corrective service space where men who are abused, and the minute a protection order is raised against a man, out he goes and into some kind of, halfway house, so that the woman can stay and take care of her child and children and be able to continue life as normal. So it really is a big area of bias that we're seeing.
I agree. Speaking of men, how important is it for them to join the fight on the side of women and for them to be an ally for women? How important is it?
I think it's important for men not just to be our allies, but to just do their job, to look, to really call one another out. Because most men know who's an abuser. They hang out in the bars and they have the same kind of conversations. We have a program called He for She Taverns, where we work with men in taverns, and they talk to one another about their relationship with women and why they abuse, and they have conversations about how to change that behavior. And we are beginning to see some shifts and realizing that actually maybe men don't really have these kind of conversations. Women talk about this all the time, but men don't. And so it is so important that men stand and call one another out and hold one another accountable to make sure that abuse is not in their name. And so we've been having conversation with churches to say to the churches, call your congregants one by one and make sure no congregant under your watch is an abuser, because, 80-90% of the people go to church, so some form of church, right? So every church leader, whether an Islamic leader or a Christian leader or a Jewish leader or any other leader, can actually call out their congregants and say, not under my watch are we going to accept this kind of abuse. So we want men to just stand up and just do it. You don't even have to say, I'm standing with you women. No, stand with other men. Just make sure that those men take responsibility.
I'm protecting women, absolutely. I love that narrative, and I do wish that it's something that every country adapts, trying to bring in men to do their jobs, like you said.
Yeah.
What I'm realizing is that the struggle of women goes way beyond gender-based violence at this point.
Yeah.
It's affecting them financially as well. I mean, we have women in business, we have women working in informal sectors that are being affected by this. How can those people, be helped? And is there anything that countries are doing to make sure that they help those women?
This is such an important question, Zozi. There's two different types of women in business that we see across the world. The one is women-owned businesses who are sustainable. They're in sustainable businesses that have, they manufacture, they're in the service industry. It's SMMEs, as they're called, small and medium enterprises. Many of them, because they're not essential services, are now at home and losing incomes that they should be actually earning. So one of the things that we're calling on businesses to do across the world is to identify women in the essential services sector, to make sure that they are given priority to continue to perform whatever services they can. The issue of counseling and psychosocial support and coaching and mentoring, and this is a big area that is required right now. But also just services to be able to provide protective equipment. And we are really pushing that whoever is procuring private protective, personal protective equipment like masks and any of the gear that is required for any health worker, but also for us who are walking on the streets, buy from women as much as you can. Buy from women as much as you can, because when a woman earns, her family eats. When a woman earns, more people benefit from that one earning than an equal man in the same business. So even as a community and economic response for a country, it is more effective if women are the ones who you buy from. So that's one level of business. So really trying to make sure that those women businesses can continue to thrive. Countries are coming up with different types of stimulus packages and relief. And that's very important. For some countries, they see it as a cost, but in actual fact, what this is an opportunity to keep money in the economy. So give them relief, help them to be able to pay off their loans, or help them to be able to actually continue to, to be able to pay their employees, because that way their employees then can buy food and feed their families and continue to thrive as they're trying to figure out, how long this lockdown is. And then we have women in the informal sector. Across the world, it varies from 30% to 60% of our economies are run by the informal sector. In New York, you have all your guys on the street where you buy your caps and gloves and stuff, right? On the streets of New York all the time. That's the informal sector. Many countries, especially in developing countries, thrive off of the informal sector. In a country like Ghana and in Nigeria and West Africa, a lot of West Africa, over 60% of the economy is driven by women in the informal sector. Whether they're trading cloth or trading food or goods of all kinds, that's where they are. In South Africa, we know them as well. Many women are in the informal sector. And unfortunately, their businesses depend on people moving. They depend on people getting up and going to work so that they can buy magwinya and buy, food on the street. They're locked down now. They're locked down and they can't do that. And so what we're calling on governments to do is to dig into your social security programs and provide relief funding so that food can be provided to these families, and so that there's some level of income so that their businesses don't go down the drain, and when the lockdown opens, they can get back up. So we are doing all kinds of assessments to try to understand which businesses can actually continue to provide essential services. How can women farmers continue to provide food that is needed? You know, how can women really, wherever they are, continue to either provide the business or at least get the food and financial relief to keep their families going. This is so, so important, and this is what will keep the economy going. Whenever you hear about economic stimulus packages, it sounds like big money that goes into banks. But let me tell you, if you provide the stimulus to, you know, millions of women who would otherwise be running their businesses and feeding their families, that could actually drive the economy. So let's put the money behind where women in businesses are. That's what we're calling
money
on
behind women in businesses. I love that. So I don't want to keep you very, very long with all the storms and lightning happening there. But is there anything that you would like to add on, that you would like to say? If you have any message for our listeners and just anyone interested in hearing what you want to say.
Thank you so much, Zosie. First of all, I just want to thank you for this platform, and thank you for using your voice to enable us to talk and to enable others to listen to this kind of conversation. You know, I see my kids on this Insta live, but, you know, I'm kind of been running away from it. So I'm now going to be following you big time and making sure I do this on a regular. So just look out for me now, girls. But I think the other thing is really just to call on people to, wherever they are, first of all, I believe in prayer. So pray for the health workers in a big, big, big way. But also just sending simple messages of support wherever we are is such an important thing. And then from country to country, there are many, many people in need of food, just simple food. And different countries have got packages that run from $5 to $10. And if you look, you will find that whether it's churches or it's, you know, women's groups, or it's just communities who are raising money to just make sure that your neighbor who can't otherwise eat during this time is able to do so. So take the time out to, you know, just take your heart and look at, just examine yourself during this time. And that really is my message, is that this is really a time for us to galvanize together and just pull together. It's going to take a long time, so let's all be patient, but it is necessary. It is necessary. We heard from our ministers and from our president, presidents across the world, that it is so important that women pull together, that women are provided the opportunity to support one another, and that families band together at this time. So let's feed whoever needs food right now. That's what I would say, Zosie.
Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you actually spoke about people sending out messages, and that's something that we have been doing as the Miss Universe community. We actually have a hashtag called Universe United. So you can check that out, Mom Anne, because what we do there is we send messages of love. People are sharing their stories. We're just this
wonderful
global community where, you know, people feel lonely. And so it's always nice to know that there's people out there. It makes us feel less anxious. So if you can check it out, and you can join the hashtag as well. Just like tell us what you've been up to and just send messages of love to the world. But thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Ma.
Bye.
Guys, that was Anne, and she is incredible. If you guys have any more questions, like you saw, she has so much knowledge. I can keep in contact with her, and I can be able to send in the messages that you guys want to send her and questions that you want to send her. So if you have any questions for UN Women or for Anne, or just about this conversation that we had today, please send in those questions to our DM, and we will try and answer them to the best of our abilities. Thank you so much once again for joining us. I feel like this was such an important conversation. Speaking about gender equality in the time of COVID-19 is very important because women are usually hit the most when things like this happen. And I love the message of unity that she brought for us, that you don't have to be a woman to fight this. Men and women should stand together to make sure that we finally reach a gender equal world. I hope you guys had a safe Easter weekend. I hope that you guys called your families and you checked on everyone, and that everyone is just still keeping healthy and sane. Our DMs are still open for #UniverseUnited. So please make sure to send in your messages of love, of encouragement, and just keep on sharing your life with us. We appreciate you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you. I will see you next time on Thursday with another special guest. Bye.